The Financial Survival Network, helping you survive and thrive in the new economy. Go to CarrieLutz.com and sign up for 30 free micro trainings on financial survival.
1490 WGCH. This is Carrie Lutz. You're listening to the Financial Survival Network. We are about to have our second roundtable. With me is David Morgan of silver-investor.com. He's one of the foremost authorities on silver in the world. He travels all over giving roundtables and giving discussions and lectures on the shiny metal. And then coming from mid-continent is Chris Duane of don't-tread-on.me, also a major silver aficionado. What I like about Chris is he actually put his money or his metal where his mouth is. He liquidated all of his assets pre-crash, put them into silver at a ridiculously low price, and now he gets to talk about it. Hello, gentlemen. How are you today? David, how you doing today?
I'm well, thank you.
All right. And Chris, how are things in the hinterland?
We're doing good, despite it being cold. At least it's sunny out.
Hey, it's 50 degrees here in Greenwich, Connecticut. I'm looking out the window at the Long Island Sound, and if I had a sailboat, I know where I'd be if I liked sailing, which I don't. So we're here to talk about silver. Silver is such a controversial issue for something that's been around thousands of years, been used as money, been used for jewelry. It really shouldn't be, and yet we keep reading about how great it is. It got up to almost $50, which was just south of its all-time high. Now it's been languishing in the low to mid-30s. It's around $34 today on February 9th, 2012. David, how much longer do we have to wait till silver hits the promised land?
Well, no one knows for sure, but I just want to reiterate a couple things that you said. One, it just got below 50, its all-time high, and that's its all-time nominal high. So in inflation-adjusted terms, it'd have to be much higher to make a new high. I also like to point out that the $50 move was really a one-day event. It was a buying frenzy, if you will, and it was a spike high. But nonetheless, it did achieve that price. We can't take away a fact. But a lot of people have the misperception, unless they really look at the chart or understand the market, that that was like a steady-state price or whatever. In fact, on the day it hit 50, I was in downtown Los Angeles, involved in silver, and the dealers in that area, every dealer, Superior Coin, which no longer exists on Sepulveda Boulevard, and several others, Encino Coin, several in the Los Angeles area, had bid back to 35 on the buy side. So even though the futures market showed you $50, and that's a fact, the actual physical market in LA, I can't speak about any other city, was going to pay you 35. So what was taking place was a lot of deals were made on the street because there were, of course, buyers and sellers, waiting in line in the silver market to, either buy or sell. So just a little caveat on, that being a huge event, but it was a very small time frame. Moving on and answering the question, how long do we have to wait? I think that we're going to have to wait probably till the third quarter of this year to get past the, resistance level of about 48.50 and then move higher. Now, the only caveat to that is what's going on in the global financial system. And things are happening so rapidly, and there's so many black swans flying around that if one taps into the other one, that could be almost an overnight event. I don't want to get too hypey on this, but what I'm trying to suggest for everyone to consider in their thinking is that it's really hard to predict these things, especially with the turmoil that we have. But all things being muddling along as we are with a lot of the propaganda press continuing to tell us, don't worry, everything's okay, it's okay, we'll just paper it over. As long as that mantra continues and people buy into it, then I do believe we probably will have to wait until the third quarter 2012 to see prices above 50.
All right. And Chris, what's your take on it? We almost hit that magical $50 mark, and adjusted for inflation, silver would have to be probably around $200 to meet its all-time real high. But we're in a waiting game here, and I think we're waiting for a lot of events to occur. What's your time frame for it?
Well, David's right with the inflation-adjusted numbers. I mean, if we use the Bureau of Labor Statistics numbers to get back to that $50 nominal high in today's dollars, it would have to be $132 an ounce. If we were to use Shadow Stats numbers like John Williams puts out, that number would be $450. And I recently made a video saying that the historical value of silver could go as high as $960 an ounce. But one of the things I think people are totally missing here is that you're really not buying silver per se. What you're doing is getting out of all the other paper assets. And if people understand that our money system, our entire way of life is built on debt, and that this debt is unsustainable, the true purpose of buying silver is to take yourself out of that mathematically inevitable collapse that is going to happen. And that, to me, is the most important thing. The timing is unsure. No one knows. David doesn't know. I don't know. Even the head of J.P. Morgan doesn't know. The Federal Reserve doesn't know, because this is all built on faith. And all that's going to happen is one day people are going to wake up and realize that their way of life is unsustainable, and that everything else is based off the value of us, things continuing to go on as it is. And at some point, this is going to end, and it's a 100% mathematically inevitable event. The debt is either going to become so large that we have to default on it, or we're going to continue to pay these debts, so much so that the dollar that all these assets in our entire way of life is built on will become worthless. So the only question I have to people is, are you going to be early to this event and not worry about it, take your money out of paper assets and put it into physical, or are you going to be that one person who's one day too late to this event? And I think that people really need to take into consideration that this is going to happen much faster than anybody else can expect. A worldwide collapse in currencies is unprecedented and will have the most dramatic effects on your life.
It's interesting that you say that, because we've watched these markets, the paper markets, go back and forth almost in a hypnotic fashion. I mean, if you're a chart watcher, you're in a trance. If you go out there, it seems to me the metal is easily accessible. Have you had any trouble purchasing physical silver, David?
Not for some time. I mean, right now, I think the question is, is the supply really that tight? Because there's a lot of writings on the internet about a silver shortage or tight supply, and at times there certainly has been, and I've been one of those people, by the way. I mean, I want to be real forthright about what I've said and I'm about to say. As far as the overall silver supply, now when I say silver, I mean all forms of silver. I'm not talking about art objects, but I'm talking investable silver. So I'm talking about any size silver bar, be it a 1 ounce bar, a 10 ounce bar, a 100 ounce bar, or even a 1,000 ounce bar, all that category, plus all coins. And that would be government minted coins or silver rounds, which are 1 ounce coins or half ounce coins, privately minted, but they're 999 fine silver. So is that supply really that tight? Well, the truth is that it got very, very tight about 2005, 2006, and it was probably the lowest above ground stockpile that had existed in probably recorded history for investable silver. Since about 2007 till present day, there has been a lot more mining of all commodities, including silver, and there has been an increase, actually, of the amount of silver above ground that's in investable form. However, that is probably, at best, a 6-month above-ground supply. And a lot of people that are studying silver or trying to make up their mind that they should buy silver or buy gold, gold has this sort of mystical quality about it and gets a lot more press and a lot more advocates. But if you use the same logic that, well, I don't really want to buy silver because the supply has increased slightly over the last 5 years, if you applied the same logic to gold, we have a 40-year supply of gold above ground. We only have a 6-month supply of silver above ground. The other point is that the supply did get tight in the retail side during the financial crisis of 2008. It was extremely difficult to buy any what I call retail product, which would be a silver round, silver coin, government minted or otherwise, 10-ounce bar, 100-ounce bar. Those things were in high demand, and the supply was short. The demand could not be met by the supply, so price arbitrates that. So even though the futures exchange was showing approximately $9 silver, the honest-to-goodness price was about $13.50. So in that case, I'd have to say yes, there was a shortage. At the same time, the commercial bars were not in short supply. I actually took 3 of them myself at that time, paying about $9,000 per bar. But the only way to get them was to go through a very big dealer that handles commercial bars or the futures exchange or something like that, which is exactly what I did personally. I think that the question also has to have an add-on, and that is, well, if it's not tight, then I have no impetus to go out and get it right now. And I do not like the fear card, and I don't like the you got to do it now or you're going to lose out. I don't like the high-pressure sale. Having said that, I'm going to make it sound that way somewhat. And I'm going to add on to what Chris said on the previous question. If you think you've got all the time in the world to buy silver, or you're going to wait for a certain price or a certain day or a certain time, you better think again. The reason is that amount of silver that I just discussed is so small relative to the amount of people that have cash that they want to protect, deploy, and use or get into this market, that it could be literally a matter of overnight or within a week or two where you would absolutely be unable to find silver. Now, I'm saying that not only from a mathematical perspective, but from an experiential perspective. Just what I said a moment ago about what happened in the crisis of 2008. A lot of the silver bears thought, well, once we smash it down, we'll get these weak sisters to cough up their silver. Well, exactly the opposite happened. People that know what's going on said, are you kidding? You're giving me a gift. I can't get to the silver store fast enough. And when they got there, again, they had to bid up or pay up in order to get it. So silver right now appears to be in a fairly tight supply, but not significantly so on the retail side. I just talked to a couple of the wholesalers last week, and they're telling me that the market's pretty quiet. Usually happens. People don't buy when it's quiet. They usually wait for the price to move up, and then they get enthusiastic and start buying again. But I hope I probably overdid that, but I think it's very important to get a clear picture of what the supply-demand fundamentals are, especially in a tight market like a silver market, because even though, as I said, there's 6 months supply, it wouldn't take more than several days of significant buying to take the price much, much higher.
And it's a very small market compared to copper or other base metals, compared to even gold. It's a tenth the size of gold, so a little bit of demand goes a long way. You're seeing the same trends, Chris, as far as supply goes, that it can be gotten, but the shelves aren't overflowing?
Yeah, I mean, just from my own personal experience, I mean, if you're looking for a few ounces, which is the majority of our listeners, they maybe pick up 100, 1,000 ounces. Yeah, you can get that all day long. But when you start looking at major money, $1 million plus, it starts to become more difficult. And then you also have Eric Sprott, who just, is about to put $1.5 billion into the silver market if he can raise the funds. And he, in the past, he's been able to do that. And if you look at the amount of COMEX registered silver inventory right now, there is just above $1 billion of physical silver sitting at one of the largest, vaults in the world. And just to put that teeny $1 billion into perspective, forget Eric Sprott, the United States government 2 Fridays ago increased our deficit, not just spent more money, increased our deficit by $120 billion. So that $1 billion worth of silver would represent about 12 minutes of increased government spending. We are living in a world of not billions, not trillions, but quadrillions in paper wealth out there. So yeah, while the music's still playing and people think everything is fine, there is silver to be gotten for everybody. But there will be a physical event that will interrupt our reality and people will panic. And there is a very small window of opportunity for people to get theirs before everybody else does. Another thing that I want people to take in consideration is there's a lot of people out there who think that they have silver. People who have unallocated bullion accounts, people who have SLV, people who have, various forms of owning silver. And when this all comes about, when people actually say, hey, remember that silver I've been paying storage on? I want that silver. There's been more than enough cases of people who have been paying storage on physical metal that did not have the metal underlying it. So, yeah, everything's fine today, and that is our illusion. That's a famous quote from Voltaire. Everything is great today, but at some point, a reality is going to come into our market, and I don't know what it's going to be. It could be a Greek default. It could be an Iranian war. It could be one physical ounce not being delivered in a delivery month at the COMEX. But at some point, our reality is going to change instantly and overnight and forever. And this is not something, David doesn't want to use the fear card. I will. This is not something you want to play cute with. I know too many people who have been dragging their feet about buying physical silver. David had a brilliant video about, if you ask a financial advisor about owning gold and silver, the most honest guys will say, yeah, everybody should own a little bit. And David made the brilliant point of, well, how much is a little bit? Is it $20, $50, $100, $1,000? And if you started to divide the amount of silver that's available per person in the world, there isn't a little bit out there for everybody. And that the amount of money that people have, I'm now talking, when I first started, I was talking to people who had $10,000, to invest in silver. Now I'm talking to guys who have $5 and $10 million who are liquidating real estate assets and stock portfolios, and they're trying to go out and buy physical silver. And it's not an easy task. Try taking physical delivery of tons of silver. It's not easy. This is something that I think people should be very aware of.
It's interesting. There is the storage issue, which we're going to address in a future conference. This is the equivalent of you don't have fire insurance on your house. All of a sudden, you smell the smoke and the place is in flames, and you try to pick up the phone and get a fire insurance policy on your house. And, generally, they're not going to write many policies for burning houses. And I think that's where we're kind of heading. And finally, Chris, what do you think the best ways to purchase silver? What form do you think is best?
Well, let's put it this way. When I first started buying in 2005, I made the mistake or did the gut reaction of buying 100-ounce bars. And I did that because I wanted to get the most amount of physical silver for my own money. As I progressed in my buying, I started buying more silver eagles because I like they're beautiful and they certainly have held their value very well. But to me personally now, what I've been doing is only buying, 90% pre-1964 U.S. coins. And the logic that I have for this is that, one, it has probably the lowest premiums out there. So you're really getting the most silver for your money. You probably get an extra couple 100 ounces of silver. If you spent, what you would spend on a monster box, you probably get an extra couple 100 ounces of physical silver if you bought, these pre-1964 coins. But the reason why is because there was no premium when the United States government printed them. But the reason why I think that it's going to do very well is that the time that you're actually going to want to use your silver, I've always said that I'm probably never going to sell my silver for dollars. It's a failed currency. The day that silver goes to 500, history shows it'll probably be at 10,000 the next week in a hyperinflation. But the day that I'll actually use it, the real purchasing power of that money, the smallest divisible coin should have the most purchasing power. Because if you think about it, if you wanted to actually go out and spend your silver, a 100-ounce bar is going to be very difficult to break down to go buy a loaf of bread or, something like that. Whereas, a tenth of an ounce of silver or, whatever it works out to for a U.S. dime, it's even less than that. You're actually probably going to have much more purchasing power the smaller the coins are. So I tend to like this 90% pre-1964 silver. And I've also made a very clear point not to call it junk silver because I think it's a psychological, warfare to make you not like it. I tend to prefer the name constitutional silver because that's exactly what it is.
And David, how do you think is the best way to accumulate silver and in what form?
Well, my thoughts are very similar. I pretty much from the beginning advocated that if you should start with a bag of constitutional silver. I like that, Chris. I wrote an article. Terms around the silver market: junk silver, scrap supply. It's all these negative connotations, and it's linked to the word silver. And of course, I'm not a big conspiracy guy, but there are definitely conspiracies out there. And I've always thought that not necessarily that's conspiracy, but why is it got all these negative connotations? Anyway, back on point, you should start with constitutional silver. You should start with pre-1964 previous 90% silver coins, be them dimes, halves, or quarters. And I think that's the best place to start. You usually get the best buy at that in that form. And then after that, I'd say it's pretty much an individual choice. I agree with what Chris said about the 100-ounce bars, but there's people that have fairly significant amounts to put in the silver market. Let's say 50 to 100,000, something in that range or higher. That bars are just easy to work with, and of course you can take those bars and trade them for coins, but of course you're going to pay an extra premium doing so. I'm not suggesting you do that, but you could do that. So I really think it's up to the individual, but I've always stated that you should start with the constitutional silver coins as a start, and then after that, I think it's up to the individual to make up their own mind.
Yeah, I agree. The bags of constitutional silver definitely make sense. And then when you've got enough of that, to have it in bars, probably not a bad thing, because it's just going to be a storage of wealth type thing. It's not something that you're actually going to go out and spend, because it's going to be the equivalent. I mean, when I was buying this stuff, I bought these silver bars, $999, so it was $9.99 an ounce. Now that bar is $3,500, so it's like carrying a $3,500 bill. And when nobody out there has any money, because if paper fails and all you've got is metallic money, meaning gold or silver, very few people are going to have any money at all. They're going to be really scrounging to make enough money to buy a meal. Then you need to have a combination of the two. And it's really a personal matter. It depends on your situation, your funds available, and your ability to store and where you're going to store it. And on that note, gentlemen, hey, I want to thank you both for being on here. We've got links to both your sites. Chris can be found at don't-tread-on.me, and he's also got the Sons of Liberty Academy, which is how I found him. David is always available at silver-investor.com and themorganreport.com. And this was great. We'll definitely have you both on again. David, thanks for being here.
Thank you.
And Chris, thank you also, and we'll talk to you both soon.
Sounds great. Thank you.
All right. Take care.